Welcome to this video on basic string handling. My name's Andy Wicks, and in this video we're going to go into rather more detail about strings. But I have to warn you that there is more to come. A string is any collection of characters. Mostly they're characters that you'll find on the keyboard, but as you'll see in a moment, they don't have to be. A string has to be within quotation marks. That can be either single quotes or double quotes. Most programmers use single quotes because for those you don't need to use the shift key, but Python is agnostic on that and it doesn't care. If you're using quotes within quotes, then you have to swap them round. And so if you're using single quotes in your string, you have to use double quotes in the middle and so on. So let's have a look at some of the anomalies, some of the things that aren't quite so simple to understand. For example, is your mobile number a string? Well, let's look down here where we've got some mobile numbers set up. There is a mobile number 1 here that's a string. You can see it's a string because it's got quotation marks around it. And that will definitely work. But why do I have to use a string? Why couldn't I just say it's a number? It's called a mobile number for a reason. Well, that reason has nothing to do with programming. As you can see here, we've got spaces in there, and numbers don't have spaces. So that won't work. So let's suppose we got rid of the spaces and we just used the number as it is. As you can see, that creates an error too. Numbers don't start with a 0. And Python knows there's something wrong here. So that isn't going to make it happy either. Let's comment that back out again. Now, as I said, if you wanted to use quotation marks, you have to put quotation marks within quotation marks and so on. You need something called a control character. And confusingly, a control character is more than one character. Here we're using 2 characters. To get the quotation mark, I'm using / double quote, because double quote means this is the end of the string. And so what you'd get is, he said, and then it would throw an error, because there's no such command as you can program. So if you want to use quotation marks as literals, either single or double quotation marks, you use a / in front of them. / means this is a special character, and we'll be meeting a few more of those later on in this video. But there are other special characters that can't be found on the keyboard. So for example, if I wanted y equals 2x squared, that squared, 2 to the power of, doesn't exist anywhere on the keyboard. So what we'd have to do is cheat a little. We use something called a Unicode character. Unicode characters are characters like any other characters. Every character, whether they're on the keyboard or not, has a number. And that number is represented in hexadecimal. Hexadecimal is like a decimal number, but instead of using 0 to 9, you use the numbers 0 to F, and those are treated as if they were digits. Those latter ones are numbers, not letters. And so here we're putting the character 00B2 after the X. That happens to be the squared character. I've left a note so you can find the Unicode table in the text above. So let's get into some detail. In this first block of code, I'm just going to print out my mobile number. And here it is on the screen. Now that's not particularly clever. We're just using the print statement that we've used before. But because this is a string, we use a plus sign. So if I want to put a string on the end of another string, I use this plus here. And because my mobile number is a string, not a number, I use the plus. Now we can move on to the second block of code. As you can see, it's saying statement 1 is, he said you can program, and he was right. And notice that the double quotes appear as literals because we've used that control character / double quote. The next block of code adds one statement to the end of the other. So I've got statement 3 is equal to statement 1 plus statement 2. All that does is something called concatenates two strings. It puts them as one. And what you see here is that it says, he said you can program and he was right. Look how far you've come. That's fine, but notice that there are no spaces. It can't make sense of that. So therefore we can improve on this command in the following block of code. Here we've added a third string in the middle, a string that contains some spaces. So now statement 3 is statement 1 plus some spaces plus statement 2. And the output shows that you can now get properly formatted text. The sentences are as you'd expect to find them if you were reading typed text. But let's take this a little further. Could we have these statements on separate lines, say? Well, yes, we can. In this block of code, we've added the /n control character in between statement 1 and statement 2. /n means new line. And what we've got here are both statements being printed on separate lines. Notice that for cheating purposes, I've added the new line statement at the beginning of the ordinary text. So he said you can program and he was right. Look how far you've come. You've learned about a couple of different kinds of control characters now. But what about things like tabs? Well, you've guessed it. That's what's coming in the next block. Here, instead of using the new line character, I've put a tab in. So it will decide how many spaces to put there. If you're unlucky, it might just put both strings next to each other because the next tab stop just happens to be right next to where we finished the first statement. But in this case, it's added 3 characters because that's where it thinks the next tab is. But you can format text on the screen in this way. Finally, there's that Unicode character that we added, that squared that I promised you. Here you can see the result is y equals 2x squared, with the squared being shown exactly the way you'd expect it to. This is a special character that can be found in the Unicode command set. This is a special character that can be found in the Unicode character set. You just need to know its hexadecimal value. You put /u in front and away you go. The link to the Unicode characters is in the text above.